They used to laugh at me, calling me a stinking pig farmer, as if my entire existence was mud and manure. My parents, Olivia Bennett's parents, the people who were supposed to lift me up, sneered every time I came home from the farm. I still remember my mother waving her hand in front of her nose like I carried the stench of pigs into her spotless kitchen, and my father shaking his head as if I was destined to stay small, dirty, invisible. What they never saw was the fire those words lit inside me. While they mocked, I studied recipes, saved tips from late-night shifts, and dreamed of flavors that could build an empire. They never once believed in me. But now, the tables have turned. The pig farmer they ridiculed stands at the head of Empire Bites, a multi-million-dollar restaurant chain they suddenly want to claim as their own. Growing up, I was never the golden child in our house. That title belonged to my younger sister, Sophia. She was the ballerina, the straight-A student, the daughter my parents paraded around at family gatherings. And me? I was the girl who spent summers knee-deep in mud, helping my uncle on his pig farm to earn a little money. It didn't matter that I was only 12, or that I was doing honest, grueling work. To my parents, it was something shameful. "Olivia, you reek of pigs again," my mother would say, pinching her nose the second I walked through the door. My father chuckled, adding, "At least Sophia doesn't spend her days rolling around in filth." I laughed along sometimes, pretending the words didn't cut, but at night I'd bury my face in the pillow and wonder why their pride always skipped over me. Sophia, of course, loved the attention. She mimicked them, wrinkling her nose dramatically whenever I came near. "Pig girl," she'd whisper under her breath at school, where friends could hear. I stayed quiet, clutching my notebooks, focusing on homework as if grades could shield me from humiliation. Even when I won small awards for essays or science projects, the applause at home was faint, a polite pat on the shoulder compared to the bouquets and gifts showered on Sophia. But the farm gave me something my parents could never see: discipline. While they joked about the smell, I was learning the rhythm of hard work feeding animals before sunrise, scrubbing pens until my hands ached, and realizing that real value doesn't come wrapped in ribbons or medals. I started sneaking cookbooks into my backpack, experimenting late at night with flavors I imagined could drown out the sting of their insults. One memory still burns bright. On my 15th birthday, my parents handed me a card with $20 inside. Sophia got a brand new bicycle 2 months later, shiny teal with a wicker basket and pastel ribbons on the handlebars. Dad called it a milestone gift. For me, the milestone was saving my farm wages to buy second-hand kitchen knives. I held those knives like trophies, promising myself I would carve a path that no one could laugh at. Looking back now, I see how their mockery forged me. Each time they called me dirty, I thought of clean white tablecloths I'd one day own. Each time they dismissed me, I dreamed bigger of a place where people would line up not to ridicule but to savor what I created. They thought they were tearing me down, but they were building the very foundation of my determination. I was Olivia Bennett, the pig farmer they despised. But in those quiet, overlooked years, I was already sowing the seeds of something far greater. When I turned 18, I left home with nothing but a duffel bag, 3 cookbooks, and the stubborn belief that my future wasn't going to smell like pigs forever. College was out of reach. I had no financial support, no cosigner for loans, so I carved my own path the only way I knew how: work. I started as a dishwasher at a greasy spoon diner just off the highway. The hours were brutal. I'd scrub pans until 2 in the morning, my hands red and raw, then wake up for the breakfast shift 4 hours later. The pay barely covered rent in my tiny one-room apartment where the radiator hissed all night and the ceiling leaked when it rained. Dinner was usually instant ramen or day-old bread. A kind waitress slipped into my bag when the manager wasn't looking. But I didn't see drudgery. I saw opportunity. Every time the head cook shouted an order, I listened. I memorized how he flipped pancakes, how he seasoned the hash browns, how he kept plates moving even when the ticket rail overflowed. After shifts, when the kitchen quieted and the lights dimmed, I'd ask questions. Sometimes I was ignored, sometimes laughed at, but other nights an exhausted chef would shrug and show me how to chop onions faster or balance flavors in a sauce. I saved every tip, every spare dollar. Instead of new clothes, I bought second-hand knives sharper than the ones from my farm days. I practiced at night, slicing vegetables with precision, timing myself until I could dice an onion in 30 seconds flat. Cooking became my secret rebellion, the one thing I controlled while the world seemed to conspire against me. There were nights when loneliness almost broke me. I'd scroll through social media, seeing Sophia's photos in sparkly dresses at sorority parties, parents smiling beside her at college football games. Meanwhile, I was wiping grease off counters in silence, wondering if anyone even remembered my birthday. But every pang of envy hardened into resolve. If they wouldn't cheer for me, I'd build something that demanded applause. By 21, I'd moved up to line cook at a small Italian restaurant. It wasn't glamorous, the kitchen was cramped, the air thick with steam, but it was my first real taste of creation. The chef, a gruff man named Marco, pushed me harder than anyone. "You want respect? Earn it with consistency," he barked. And I did. I burned sauces, ruined risottos, and once dropped an entire tray of tiramisu. But I kept showing up. It was in that kitchen, standing over a bubbling pot of tomato sauce at midnight, that I realized I didn't just want to cook, I wanted to lead. I wanted my own restaurant, my own vision, a place where no one could reduce me to pig farmer again. The dream had taken root. All I needed now was the courage to make it grow. My first real break didn't come with fireworks. It came with exhaustion, burnt fingers, and a chance encounter on the worst night of my shift. I was 22, working the dinner rush at Marco's Italian place when the sous chef walked out mid-shift. The line went into chaos, orders piling up, customers complaining. Marco barked orders in every direction, but we were drowning. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was muscle memory from all those nights on the farm, when you had no choice but to keep going no matter how tired. I stepped into the sous chef station and started cooking. My hands moved like they'd been waiting for this moment. I remembered Marco's lectures, his curses, his precise way of seasoning. Dish after dish went out: risotto, chicken marsala, spaghetti puttanesca. When the last plate left the pass, I expected Marco to yell at me for overstepping. Instead, he just grunted, "Not bad, Bennett, not bad at all." That night, something shifted. I wasn't just a line cook anymore. Marco began giving me more responsibility: inventory, prep schedules, even creating a weekend special. One Friday, I pitched a recipe I'd been experimenting with for months: a pulled pork ragu with herbs I grew on my windowsill. He was skeptical. Pig farmer's daughter cooking pork? Too on the nose. But when the dish sold out in 2 hours, he slapped me on the back and said, "You might actually have something." For the first time, I felt visible. Not to my parents. Of course they never came by. They didn't even acknowledge the article the local paper wrote about our little ragu sensation. But I saw it in the customers who asked for my name, in the wait staff who bragged about Chef Olivia's dish, and in Marco, who stopped barking and started teaching. After 2 years, I had saved just enough scraps, really, to rent a tiny storefront in Denver. It wasn't glamorous: peeling wallpaper, secondhand tables, and a kitchen barely bigger than my old apartment. But when I hung the sign "Empire Bites" above the door, my chest swelled with pride. Opening night was chaos. The ovens malfunctioned, a waiter quit mid-shift, and I nearly sliced my finger open prepping vegetables. But the place was packed: friends from Marco's, curious locals, even a food blogger who stumbled in and later wrote, "This little spot has the heart of a giant." I remember locking up at 2 a.m., slumping against the door, and whispering to myself, "You did it. You actually did it." No one from my family showed up. No call, no flowers, not even a text. Sophia posted on Instagram that night about a sorority gala, with mom and dad glowing beside her in tuxedos and gowns. I scrolled past the picture, smiled bitterly, and went back to scrubbing my floors. They didn't know it then, but the pig farmer they mocked had just planted the seed of an empire. Empire Bites was supposed to be a modest dream: 1 restaurant, maybe 2 if I was lucky. But once the doors opened, it was like Denver itself had been waiting for me. Word spread fast. Customers lined up outside on weekends, and reservations booked out weeks in advance. The food blogger who had stumbled in opening night came back with a photographer, and suddenly my pulled pork ragu was splashed across a glossy magazine page under the headline, "From Farm to Fine Dining, the Unexpected Queen of Flavor." That article changed everything. Investors started circling, offering partnerships, and landlords who had once ignored my calls now begged me to take their vacant properties. Within 2 years, I opened a second location downtown, then a third in Boulder. By the time I turned 27, Empire Bites wasn't just a restaurant, it was a brand. The logo with its crowned fork became a symbol of comfort food, with a touch of elegance. The recognition was surreal. Local TV stations invited me to cook live. Food festivals gave me booths next to celebrity chefs I had idolized. Once, at a Denver culinary event, a stranger stopped me mid-aisle and said, "Are you Olivia Bennett? I drove 3 hours just to eat at your place." I thanked him, smiling, though a small ache lingered. I wished, just once, my parents could have heard that. But they didn't. Not a word from home. Mom occasionally liked Sophia's photos, online gowns, galas, sorority reunions, but never acknowledged my success. Dad stayed silent, except for the rare holiday email about, "Hope you're well." Meanwhile, Sophia's life was a carousel of new jobs, failed startups, and glamorous trips. Whenever her ventures collapsed, she landed softly backed by my parents' unconditional support. I told myself I didn't care. I had my staff, my customers, my empire. Yet sometimes, late at night after closing, I'd stare at the empty booths and wonder what it might feel like to see my parents sitting there, proud, clapping as I brought them a dish I had perfected. The silence on their end was louder than any applause I could imagine. Still, growth didn't wait for validation. By the 3rd year, I had 6 locations and a small corporate office. I hired managers, accountants, marketing staff. The girl who once scrubbed pans until her knuckles bled was now signing contracts worth millions. My hands were still calloused, but they held pens as often as knives. One evening, after a long day finalizing a lease for our 7th location, I stood outside the first Empire Bites, looking at the neon glow of the sign. The street buzzed with laughter from diners inside. My chest filled with a quiet pride. I had built this. Me, the so-called pig farmer. And though my family hadn't said a word, the world had. The world was listening. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, right after the grand opening of our 8th location in Colorado Springs. The local paper had run a full-page spread on Empire Bites, with my picture smiling in front of a ribbon I'd just cut. I didn't think much of it, just another piece of press to frame in the office. But, apparently, my parents read it too. The first sign was a voicemail from Mom. Her voice sounded almost sugary, like the way she used to talk to Sophia's friends when she wanted to impress them. "Olivia, honey, your father and I are just so proud of you. We'd love to come by the restaurant sometime. Maybe dinner this week?" I stared at my phone, the words ringing hollow. Proud? After years of silence? Then came the second sign. Sophia herself. She showed up at one of my Denver locations unannounced, dressed head to toe in designer clothes I knew she hadn't bought on her own. She made a show of hugging me in front of my staff, snapping selfies, tagging Empire Bites on Instagram with captions like, "So proud of my sis, the CEO." I felt my jaw tighten. Sophia had never once called me sis when it mattered. That night, during closing, she lingered behind while my team wiped down tables. "Olivia," she said, her voice syrupy but her eyes calculating. "Empire Bites is incredible. You've built something amazing, and Mom and Dad think it's only fair I get involved. You know, family business and all." The words chilled me. Family business. The phrase I'd dreaded. I remembered the nights I'd skipped meals so I could wire Sophia money for rent. The times I'd sent her checks marked loan, she never repaid. And now, with the restaurants thriving, she wanted a slice? A week later, Mom and Dad invited me over for Sunday dinner, something they hadn't done in nearly a decade. The moment I walked in, I saw the table set with their finest china, a manila folder perched neatly beside Dad's plate. It was déjà vu, a perfect echo of every trap-laden dinner from my childhood. "We've been talking," Dad began after carving the roast, "and with your business growing so fast, It's time we formalize things. Sophia has a proposal. Sophia leaned forward, practically glowing. I could take over as a manager. Marketing, public relations, all the fun stuff. In exchange, I think a 25% profit share is more than reasonable. I nearly laughed. Reasonable? 25% for someone who hadn't lifted a single tray or cooked a single dish? My fork froze mid-air as old memories crashed over me. The insults, the dismissals, the birthdays forgotten. I didn't argue that night. I smiled politely, nodded, and let them think they'd cornered me. But inside, a storm was brewing. They hadn't come back to celebrate me. They'd come back to cash in. And for the first time in my life, I knew I wasn't going to let them. The invitation arrived like clockwork. Another family dinner. I almost didn't go, but something inside me wanted to look my parents in the eye and hear them say the words out loud. When I stepped into the dining room, it felt staged like a set prepared for a play. The fine china, the crystal glasses, the centerpiece of roses that Mom reserved for holidays. And there, sitting squarely next to Dad's plate, was the folder. Cream-colored, thick, ominous. My stomach tightened. We exchanged the usual pleasantries, though everything about their smiles felt too polished, too rehearsed. After a few bites of roast beef, Dad cleared his throat, his fork clinking against porcelain. "Olivia," he began, "we've been thinking about the future of Empire Bites. It's only right that the business remain in the family." Sophia's eyes gleamed as she straightened in her chair. "I've worked up a plan. I'll handle the management, branding, social media, client relations. You can focus on cooking while I grow the empire." She leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming the aroma of garlic bread. "In return, a 25% profit share. Fair, isn't it?" Fair. The word hit me like a slap. Fair was what I begged for at 16 when I asked for help with community college tuition, only to be told there wasn't enough money while Sophia received a new car. Fair was the birthday card with $20 while she got a bicycle with streamers. Fair was me wiring her rent money while eating ramen in a leaking apartment. I set my fork down carefully, keeping my voice steady. "Interesting. May I see the folder?" Dad slid it across the table, his lips curling into a smug smile. "It's already been drawn up by my attorney. Just needs your signature." My hands didn't tremble as I opened it. Inside, neat pages outlined Sophia's role, her compensation, and clauses that would quietly edge me out of my own company's decisions. They hadn't come here to negotiate. They had come to ambush me. I closed the folder, placed it gently on the table, and reached down to the leather briefcase I'd brought. Its weight had been reassuring all evening, like armor. With a deliberate click, I opened it. The sound echoed in the room like a gunshot. Dad's smile faltered. Mom fidgeted with her napkin. Sophia's confidence flickered, just for a second. "There's something you should see," I said, pulling out a sleek portfolio. I slid the first document across the table. 3 weeks ago, I signed a management services agreement with Denver Culinary Partners. They oversee all administrative aspects of Empire Bites. According to Section 4.3, I tapped the highlighted clause. No family members may hold management roles without unanimous board approval, and the board consists of myself and 2 independent partners. Silence. The kind that prickles your skin. You can't make decisions like this without consulting us," Dad sputtered, his voice rising. "Actually, I can." I pushed the folder closer to him. "It's all perfectly legal." Sophia's cheeks flushed crimson. "You did this on purpose, to keep me out." "I made a business decision," I replied, locking eyes with her, based on previous experience. From the briefcase, I pulled a second folder. Patient complaint forms? No. In my case, it was customer records and financial reports. I laid them out one by one. Unauthorized discounts Sophia had given her friends when she helped out last summer, scheduling errors that left diners without reservations, and an itemized list of over 60, zero in free meals, wine, and catering services provided to my family over the years. Mom reached out, her hand trembling just short of mine. "Olivia, honey, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." "These weren't learning mistakes," I said firmly. "These were careless choices made by someone who thought the rules didn't apply." Dad's face darkened. We supported you. You what? I cut him off, my voice steady, calm. Supported me when I was scraping grease off plates at 2 in the morning? Supported me when I begged for a cosigner on my first loan, and you said no? Supported me when I opened my first restaurant, and not a single one of you showed up? The words landed heavy. Even Sophia's smirk wilted. I gathered my documents back into the briefcase, each motion precise, deliberate. Empire Bites is not your piggy bank. It's my life's work. And if you thought I'd hand over a quarter of it just because you're family well, then you never knew me at all. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mom's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Dad looked as if the air had been knocked out of him. And Sophia, she sat frozen, her fingers still hovering over the unsigned contract, as if the paper itself had turned to ice. I snapped the briefcase shut. The sound was final. The ambush was over. And for once, I wasn't the one cornered. The silence after I snapped my briefcase shut felt heavier than any scream. But I wasn't finished. Not yet. I reached back into the case and pulled out a thinner folder, this one labeled in my own handwriting, Family Accounts. Sophia rolled her eyes, but I caught the flicker of unease as I spread the documents across the table. Here, I said, sliding one sheet toward my father. This is an itemized list of the complimentary meals, catering, and services provided to this family over the last 4 years. Market value, $63,400. I turned to my mother. That includes the anniversary dinners, the holiday catering, and the wine tastings you brought your book club to. Mom's lips parted, but no words came out. Then I placed another sheet in front of Sophia. And here are the personal loans I transferred to you between the ages of 21 and 24. Total, $18,650. You promised you'd pay me back when you got on your feet. You never did. Sophia's face twisted. You said those were gifts. I met her glare evenly. I said we'd figure it out later. Well, Sophia later is now. Her cheeks reddened, her composure cracking. This isn't fair. You have everything, the restaurants, the fame, the respect. What about me? I'm stuck in an office cubicle while you play hero with your precious empire. The words hit like shards of glass, not because they were true, but because they revealed the rot beneath her perfect facade. Envy. Pure, raw envy. You think this was handed to me? My voice rose, steady but fierce. You think Empire Bites magically appeared? I scrubbed pans until my knuckles bled. I ate instant noodles for years. I slept in an apartment so damp I woke up to mold on the walls. And while I was wiring you money to cover your rent, I was skipping meals to keep my dream alive. Dad slammed his fist against the table, the china rattling. Enough! You've changed, Olivia. Success has made you cold. I stood, towering over him in a way that felt almost foreign. No, success has made me visible, and you don't know how to handle a daughter you can't ignore. The words sliced through the air, leaving my father speechless. I leaned forward, pressing my palms against the table, steady as bedrock. These are my terms. 1. My business decisions are mine alone. You will not interfere, suggest, or contact my colleagues behind my back. 2. Any services provided to family will be billed at standard rates. No more freebies, no more discounts. 3. You will stop describing yourselves as partners or owners of Empire Bites, because you are not. My mother finally found her voice, trembling. Olivia, you can't mean this. We're family. Family, I said quietly, respects boundaries. Family celebrates achievements instead of trying to claim them. Tell me, when have you ever done that for me? No one answered. I gathered the papers back into the briefcase, snapping it shut again. My chest pounded, not with fear, but with release. Years of swallowed words, buried hurts, all poured into the open. The weight I had carried alone was now sitting squarely in front of them, undeniable. Sophia's chair screeched back as she stood, tears smudging her mascara. You'll regret this. Don't forget who loved you first. Ah, I exhaled slowly. Loved me? Or loved what I could give you? She stormed out, heels clicking like gunshots down the hall. Mom covered her face with trembling hands. Dad sat frozen, the contract still lying unsigned in front of him. For the first time in my life, I watched him speechless, cornered not by power, but by truth. I lifted my briefcase, suddenly lighter than I ever remembered. "Dinner's over," I said, turning toward the door. Their voices followed me, Mom's sob, Dad's muttered curse, but none of it stuck. The chains had snapped. I walked out into the cool night air, taller than I had ever been. The confrontation was over, and I had won not by shouting, not by begging, but by finally standing on my own terms. The next morning, sunlight streamed into my apartment, softer than it had ever felt. My phone buzzed nonstop texts from Mom, missed calls from Dad, a string of angry messages from Sophia. I silenced it all. For once, their voices didn't control me. Instead, I put on my blazer and headed to the newest Empire Bites location. The smell of fresh bread and simmering sauces greeted me at the door. My staff chefs in crisp whites, servers bustling with trays, looked up and smiled. "Morning, Olivia," they called, like a chorus. That was family. The kind that chose me, respected me, stood by me, not for what I could give them, but for who I was. That evening, after the dinner rush, my team gathered around the long wooden table in the staff room. Someone brought in a grocery store cake with, "To our boss," scrawled in blue icing. We laughed, clinking paper cups of soda like champagne flutes. Carlos, my head chef, raised his cup. "To Olivia Bennett, the woman who proved that being called a pig farmer doesn't mean you can't build a kingdom." The room erupted in cheers. My chest swelled, not with the hollow pride I'd once begged from my parents, but with the warmth of being seen, valued, and loved. Later, when the restaurant emptied and the neon sign glowed against the Denver skyline, I stood by the window and thought of everything that had led me here, the mud-stained boots, the ramen nights, the loneliness. And then I thought of the empire I had built, brick by brick, recipe by recipe. My parents once mocked me as a stinking pig farmer. Now, they begged for a share of Empire Bites, desperate to rewrite the story they had dismissed. But the truth was written already in every satisfied customer, every employee who believed in me, every expansion that proved resilience outshines ridicule. I whispered to myself, almost like a vow, this empire belongs to those who value it, not those who try to claim it. And as the city lights flickered below, I finally understood that I hadn't just built a restaurant chain. I had built freedom.